I'm Kirsty, qualified counselor, coach, and founder of Growth Seekers Club. Thanks for tuning into my channel and welcome to today's video, which is all about setting boundaries as a people pleaser. Now, full disclosure, I am a self-confessed people pleaser, or at least I used to be. I've done a lot of work to become more assertive and prioritize my own needs, but sometimes it can still be hard. And that's because I have to constantly go against old patterns of behavior that were the norm for me for a really long time. So I understand that this kind of change can be difficult, but I'm here to tell you that it is possible and it can be done, and today I'm going to show you how. So in this video I'm going to cover what boundaries are, why you may find it hard to set and implement them, and some steps you can take to be more assertive. So first, let's talk about what boundaries are, because I had no idea what they even were before I started learning about them. And if you're a people pleaser, maybe it's the same for you. You may just believe, like I used to, that you should always put others first. But as I learned, while considering others' needs is a great quality to have, and it shows that you're compassionate. But when you take this to the extreme and it interferes with your own well-being, it can actually be unhealthy. And let me explain the different kind of level of boundaries that we can have to help illustrate this. So, our boundaries can either be porous, healthy, or rigid. And if we always put others first and sacrifice our own needs, it means that our boundaries are porous or loose, like we don't really have boundaries. And if we consider others but put our own needs first, then our boundaries are more healthy. And if we only consider our own needs without any consideration for the needs of others, then typically that means we have very rigid boundaries. And having boundaries that are either too loose or too rigid is unhealthy, because it means that we're either constantly compromising our own needs or we're shutting others out. Now, I know that's a whole lot of theory I just gave you, so let's take a look at a concrete example to help you understand these concepts better. Okay. So imagine a friend asked you to help them move to a new apartment on the weekend, but you're writing an exam on Monday and you really needed to study. If you had loose boundaries, you might tell your friend, sure, even though you know that helping them means you'll have to study extra late that night, and it might even affect your ability to do as well as you'd hoped in your exam. Now, if you had healthy boundaries, you might tell your friend that you could maybe help them for an hour or so, but that's all, and this would consider your own needs, but it would also take into consideration your want to help your friend. Now, if you had rigid boundaries, you might tell your friend that you couldn't help them at all, or you might even just ignore them or leave them on read and not even really offer an explanation, for example. So as you can see, healthy boundaries are about balancing your own needs with those of others. Sometimes situations may call for you to loosen or tighten your boundaries, and it's healthy to keep loose or super tight boundaries in these cases. For example, if work-life balance is very important to you, then you might have really rigid boundaries where you don't allow anyone from work to contact you outside of work hours, but you might loosen this boundary in emergency situations. So in general, it's best to find a kind of balance between consideration for your own needs when it comes to setting boundaries, but it's equally important to be flexible and adaptable to different situations because your boundaries might change according to the context. Okay, now I want to talk to you about why you might find it hard to set healthy boundaries. And the first thing is that you may not even know what healthy boundaries are or look like. So if you grew up in an environment where you learned that your needs didn't matter or weren't important, or that other people's needs mattered more, then this can make it hard to, firstly, know what your needs even are and what boundaries to even set, and secondly, to actually enforce your boundaries and take a stand for yourself. And then another explanation is that you might have a low self-esteem and want to be liked, and there may be this fear of rejection there that, if I don't put others first, then they might get upset or angry and not like me for it, and that would just be awful. And you could also hold the belief that your worth is tied to how valuable you are to others. So you might believe, like, if I'm no good to others, then I'm no good, period. So these are just a few reasons why you may find it hard to set boundaries and be assertive. And now I'm going to tell you how you can start to overcome these obstacles and start taking better care of yourself. So I'll start by saying that in order to set and enforce boundaries, you need to know what your boundaries are. So you can find this out by thinking about a time in your relationships, either current or past relationships, where you felt uncomfortable, like you were doing something or just kind of going along with something to appease someone else. For example, when I look back on my own relationships, I once had a friend who would always say horrible things to me about other friends or even family members of mine, and it really didn't sit well with me. It just made me feel horrible, but I kept quiet because I didn't want to start an argument or jeopardize our relationship. So the boundary that I could take from this is that I will not tolerate people speaking badly or gossiping to me about the people I care about. And if you're wondering, I did eventually build up the courage to set this boundary with this particular friend, and it went much better than I could have expected it to. So hopefully that's reassuring for you. But anyway, so after you've identified your boundaries, and you might not be able to identify all of them, you can then work on communicating and enforcing them. So let's look at how to do this using the same boundary I just told you about. So let's say that the friend I was telling you about, she started telling me something like, Sarah never cleans her house. Whenever I go there, it's so messy, and she doesn't even work full-time or have kids. Now, remember, my boundary was I will not tolerate gossip about the people I care about. So I could use this formula to respond to my friend. First, I could start with a positive sentiment to show that I understand where she may be coming from. So I could say something like, I know that you and Sarah don't get on, and I understand that. Then I could express how her behavior makes me feel using an I statement. And this is to avoid blaming or accusing her, which could start an argument. So I could say, at the same time, Sarah's a really good friend of mine, and when you gossip about her, I feel uncomfortable. Finally, I could state what I value and reaffirm my boundary around this type of behavior so she knows how to treat me. So I could say, my friendships mean the world to me and I don't want to engage in any type of gossip about them. I'm not open to talking about other people unless it's in a positive way. Now the ball is in the other person's court. So if you've communicated your boundaries clearly, calmly, and respectfully, they should respond with understanding. And if they don't, then that's kind of a red flag. If they keep violating your boundaries, you may have to go a step further and implement some consequences. And the point of this is not to give them an ultimatum. We're not trying to control their behavior because we can't do that, right? So this is more about protecting you and your own well-being, your own inner peace. So you can't control other people's behavior, but you can control how you respond and the kind of standard you set for them. So say your friend kept gossiping. In this case, you could restate your boundary, then tell them that you're walking away from the conversation. For example, you could say something like, I understand we have different opinions about Sarah, and I need to reiterate my boundary. Gossiping about my friends is not something I'm comfortable with. I'm going to excuse myself from this conversation. And then you walk away. And this is much different than, for example, telling someone outright that, hey, if you don't stop that, our friendship is over, kind of thing. So this brings us to the end of today's video. If you have any questions about boundaries, please drop them in the comments below and I will get back to you as soon as I can. If you found this video helpful, please like it and subscribe to my channel. I do post new content on relationships every week, so if you like learning about relationships and how you can improve them, then I hope that this channel will be really helpful for you. I am also taking a new coaching and counseling clients, so if this is something that you're looking for, you can book a free discovery call with me using the link in the description. And remember, when it comes to making these changes in your behavior, if you're looking to become more assertive and be able to set boundaries, something that can be really helpful is to just start small. So you can practice this in situations or with friends and family where you feel more comfortable doing this. And just really think about the different situations that would cause you anxiety and start with the one that is the least intimidating, and then you can always build up from there. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next week.